Hello, friends. I want to start today with something that's happening to drivers up and down this country silently, automatically on their 70th birthday, and that most of them have absolutely no idea about until it's too late. Because if you passed your driving test a good few decades ago, there's an entitlement sitting on your license right now that gives you the right to drive certain larger vehicles, a bigger motorhome, a minibus. And the moment you turn 70 and renew your license, that right can vanish without a single letter, phone call, or word of warning unless you've taken a specific action beforehand. And that's just one of several real changes to the rules for older drivers that almost nobody is talking about because everyone's been distracted by a frightening story going around that isn't even true. So today, I'm going to cut through all of it and give you the calm, accurate picture. The real changes that could affect your license, your insurance, and your wallet. The frightening rumor that's a complete fabrication and one genuine change happening this very month that's going to cost every driver a bit more. Stay with me because some of this is genuinely important and it's the sort of thing nobody explains until after it's gone wrong. Before we get into it, if this is the sort of straight, no scaremongering information you find useful, do subscribe because there's an enormous amount of frightening rubbish circulating about driving at the moment and precious little plain accurate help. Right, let me start with that silent change I opened with because it's the one catching people out most cruelly. If you passed your driving test before January 1997, your license carries what are called grandfather rights. These are extra entitlements given as standard back in those days to drive larger vehicles than an ordinary car, specifically Category C1, which covers medium-sized vehicles weighing between 3.5 and 7.5 tons, and Category D1, which covers minibuses carrying between 9 and 16 passengers. For decades, these have just sat quietly on the back of people's licenses, largely forgotten. But a great many people genuinely rely on them. Someone with a larger motorhome that tips over 3.5 tons. Someone who volunteers driving a minibus for their church or a community group or a dialer ride scheme. Or someone who simply values knowing the entitlement is there. And here's the trap that's catching them out. When you turn 70 and your license comes up for renewal, those C1 and D1 entitlements are not automatically carried forward. They are removed automatically unless you have actively applied to keep them beforehand. And to keep them, you have to do something specific. You have to complete a medical examination using a form called the D4, which has to be filled in by a doctor, and an application form called the D2, and submit both to the DVLA before you renew. The medical has to meet what's called the Group 2 standard, which is considerably stricter than the ordinary car driving standard, covering your eyesight, your heart, your blood pressure, neurological conditions, and sleep disorders. And that doctor's examination typically costs you somewhere north of £100 out of your own pocket. Here's the part that really stings and why I've put it first. If you don't do this, those entitlements simply disappear the moment your renewal goes through. No warning letter, no phone call, no opportunity to object. Your ordinary car entitlement carries on perfectly fine. So you can still drive your car as normal. But if you wanted to drive that larger motor home or that minibus, that right is gone. And here's the genuinely alarming bit. If you carried on driving the motor home afterwards, not realizing the entitlement had lapsed, you would be driving both illegally and uninsured without having the faintest idea. So here is exactly what to do, and do it before your 71st birthday, not after. Log into your driving record on gov.uk and look carefully at which categories are listed on your license. If you see C1 or D1 there and you want to keep them, contact the DVLA and get that D2 and D4 process started well before you renew. Because once those entitlements have been removed, getting them back means starting the whole medical process again from scratch. Right now, let me deal with the frightening rumor because it's been everywhere and it's causing real distress. The claim flying around social media, Facebook especially, is that the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, is bringing in a law to force every driver over 70 to retake their full practical driving test. The very same test they sat as teenagers. Thousands of furious comments, thousands of shares, pensioners who've driven safely for 50 years convinced their license is about to be taken away. Let me put your mind completely at rest. That is false. The independent fact-checking organization Full Fact investigated this exact claim and confirmed it is not true. No such law has been proposed. No such bill has been put before Parliament. No minister has announced any plan to make anyone retake their practical test at any age. It simply is not happening. So if that fear has been sitting on your chest or on someone you love, you can set it down right now completely. But here's why the rumor is more than just harmless nonsense. It's a distraction. While everyone's busy panicking about a fictional test retake, they're not paying attention to the changes that are genuinely happening, like the C1 and D11 I just described. So, let me give you the rest of the real ones. The second real change concerns your eyesight, and the days of simply ticking a box are numbered. At the moment, when a driver over 70 renews every 3 years, you self-declare your eyesight. You confirm on the form that you can read a number plate at 20 meters in good daylight. There's no optician involved, no independent check, no confirmation from anyone. You state that you can see well enough. Sign the form and your license is renewed. Now, the government ran a consultation earlier this year specifically to look at whether to change this, and the widely expected outcome is that professional eyesight testing at each 3-year renewal will be brought in for the over 70s. It isn't law yet, and I stress that, but the direction of travel is clear. And here's a serious point the social media panic completely missed. And it matters far more than any fictional test retake. Making a false declaration about your eyesight when you renew is not a minor bit of paperwork. It is a criminal offence under road traffic law. If you declare that you meet the eyesight standard when you genuinely don't, and that later comes to light, particularly after an accident, the consequences go well beyond a fine. So whether or not the new testing rule ever comes in, the sensible thing is simply to get your eyes properly tested before you renew, rather than ticking the box and hoping for the best. And here's the good news. The scare stories never mention. NHS sight tests are completely free for everyone aged 60 and over. You just ring your optician. There's no referral needed. So if it's been a while, book one. If your vision has changed, you'll have time to sort out glasses or treatment before your renewal date, and you'll be signing that declaration truthfully and with confidence. The third real change involves your medical history and the list of conditions you're legally required to tell the DVLA about, because it's longer than most people realize and the penalties are stiff. The DVLA requires you to notify them of any medical condition that could affect your driving, and the list is extensive. Epilepsy or any blackouts, certain heart conditions, strokes and many strokes, diabetes treated with insulin, Parkinson's, conditions affecting your vision, sleep disorders like sleep apnea that leave you drowsy in the day, and anything that could cause a sudden loss of consciousness. Now, I want to correct something the frightening version of this gets wrong, because being accurate matters. You'll hear it claimed that the DVLA now runs random medical spot checks, secretly trolling through your GP records to catch you out. That is overstated, and I don't want you worrying about surveillance that isn't happening. There is no random trolling of your medical records going on. But here's what is true, and what you do genuinely need to know. You have a legal duty to declare a notifiable condition yourself. And separately, if your GP or a specialist has serious concerns about your fitness to drive and you haven't acted on them, they can report those concerns to the DVLA directly. So it isn't spying. It's a shared responsibility, and the reason to take it seriously is this. Failing to declare a notifiable condition carries a fine of up to £1,000. But worse, far worse, if you have an accident and it emerges you had an undeclared condition you were supposed to report, your motor insurance can be invalidated. And an uninsured driver involved in a serious accident faces consequences that dwarf any fine. So, the rule is simple. If you've been diagnosed with anything that might affect your driving since you last declared, check the notifiable conditions list on gov.uk, and if you're in any doubt, ask your GP. Declaring costs you nothing. Not declaring can cost you everything. And I'll add this reassurance. Declaring a condition rarely means losing your license anyway. Many people carry on driving perfectly legally after a condition has been assessed. It's the not declaring that causes the trouble. The fourth practical thing is about renewing itself, and one specific detail that catches people out. When you renew at 70 and every 3 years after, do it online rather than on paper if you possibly can. The online renewal now comes through in about 5 days against up to 3 weeks for a paper application, and it's more reliable. But here's the detail that trips people up. The address on your driving license must be your current one. If you've moved since your last renewal and haven't updated it, you're actually in breach of a legal requirement, and the fine for that can be up to £1,000. It's free to update and takes 5 minutes on gov.uk, and it matters all the more because so much of this works by post. If a renewal reminder or anything else goes to an old address and never reaches you, you can end up in far worse trouble over something you never even saw. So if you've moved and not updated it, that's a 2-minute job worth doing today. Now, before I finish, let me give you the one change that isn't about older drivers specifically, but affects every single one of us, and it's happening this very month. From September, the price of fuel is going up. For the last few years, there's been a 5p a litre cut on fuel duty brought in to help with the cost of living. That cut is now being phased out starting this September. And fuel duty will keep rising gradually until it's back in line with inflation by April of next year. This is the first time it's genuinely gone up in a very long while. In real terms, removing that 5p adds somewhere around £3.5 to £4 to a full tank, which across a year of normal driving works out at roughly 100 to 150. So here's the small practical tip that actually saves you a little because it's being phased in gradually rather than all at once. If your tank's getting low as September arrives, fill up sooner rather than later while it's still cheaper. And get into the habit of checking prices in your area because there can be 10p a litre or more between the dearest forecourt and the cheapest. So let me draw the whole picture together because underneath it there's one calm truth. That frightening Facebook story about being forced to retake your driving test at 70 is false. Confirmed false by the fact checkers. So let that worry go entirely. But while it's been spreading, the real changes have gone unnoticed. If you passed your test before 1997, your motorhome and minibus entitlements vanish silently at 70, unless you submit the D2 and D4 forms first, so check your license now. Professional eyesight testing at renewal is likely coming, and declaring eyesight you don't have is a criminal offence. So get a free NHS eye test before you renew. The list of medical conditions you must declare is long, and not declaring risks a £1,000 fine and your insurance, though there's no secret surveillance of your records. Renew online and keep your address current. And whatever your age, the fuel duty rise this month means it's worth filling up before prices climb. None of that is cause for panic. All of it is cause for a little sensible attention, which is a far better use of your worry than a rumour that was never true in the first place. Now, before I go, my usual word, though, a different one today, as I usually talk about money rather than motoring. I'm not the police, the DVLA, or a road safety body, so for the precise current rules and to check what's genuinely law versus what's still only proposed, the place to go is the government's own website, gov.uk rather than an alarming post someone shared online. And if a health matter is worrying you in connection with your driving, do speak to your GP. That matters more than any of this. And if this was useful, do me a kindness and share it with every older driver you know, and especially with anyone who's been sharing that test retake story on Facebook, because the calm truth and the real changes that actually matter is a far kinder thing to pass on than a scare. Drive safely, look after yourselves.